everyone, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on veterans transitioning from military to civilian life. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments, a nonprofit on a mission to strengthen mental fitness for all. Go check them out at pivotalmoments.org to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined today by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen, and we are privileged to have Captain Retired Ted Diggs with us today. Ted is a veteran of 27 years of military service as an officer in the United States Navy, where he served both in surface ships and submarines. His assignments included tours all over the U.S., Asia Pacific, and Europe. After retiring from the military, Ted sought employment in the financial advisory services industry and took a position with Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. After 11 months with Merrill Lynch, Ted transitioned to the American College of Financial Service, where he worked several positions over the past 8 years. Ted is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and holds a Master of Science in Management, a master's degree in National Security and International Studies, and is a graduate of the Darden School's Executive Program at the University of Virginia. He has also earned his Series 7 and Series 66 licenses and is a certified professional logistician, CPL. Ted, welcome to Life After the Military.
Lee, thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. You know, I practiced that word logistician before the show several times, and I still couldn't get it right. But that's one of those words, right? I should have just said CPL. We'll let it slide. Ted, great to have you here. First question we have, as we mentioned in the open, you had a 27-year career in the U.S. Navy. Share with our audience some of the things you did over those 27 years and how those experiences shaped and molded you into the person you are today.
Well, sure. And let me tell you, I didn't start off thinking I was going to do that kind of career. You know, graduating from the Naval Academy, it was actually more of a business degree, and I was looking forward to getting into some kind of business. And I was really thinking 5 years. It was a 5-year commitment. And boy, I tell you, if I could have gotten out after my first tour, I definitely would have. I mean, just anything that could have gone wrong went wrong with the people, the mission. I was very frustrated. But they had me for 5 years. I had to go to shore duty. I went to shore duty, and on shore duty, I was planning on getting out, and the detailer calls me and says, well, what would it take for you to stay in? I said, well, if you pay me more money, if you send me out with some higher quality people, and if it's more mission focused, then maybe I'll think about it. And, you know, they sent me to the submarine force. They offered me the submarine force, and I looked into it, and I got a little bit more money. But I went there, and I'll tell you, it saved my career. And there was no looking back. And I am so thankful that I did the full career, because it really shaped who you are. And man, I'll tell you, I'm sure Howie would agree with this. It's great being in the position we are now as retired, with that kind of a financial safety net and that kind of experience, where, you know, it's amazing the opportunities you've got now. So yeah, that's just a little quick background on what kept me in. But to answer your question, I guess, Lee, the couple things I did, I was a logistician. I was a supply corps officer, and I worked in the amphibious world. I also specialized in the submarine force. And my last job was the what they call the top chop. So I handled the logistics for the submarine force for the U.S. Navy. And also did joint, and I was also early on, I was an instructor as a lieutenant, as an 03. And I look back on that tour, and sometimes, you know, when you're an instructor as a junior officer, you think it's almost a throwaway tour. But I think back on how critical that tour was, you know, not only building a network, and we realize now later in life how important networks are, but the number of people that I impacted that were just a few years junior to me, that we kept in touch and continued to support each other over the years, and even now in retirement. So it was a terrific run. Enjoyed every minute. Maybe not every minute, but most minutes.
Well, Ted, I appreciate your sharing that. And what I'd like to now shift is actually your transition from the military. You retired in 2012. So what I appreciate you doing is just kind of describe for the audience how you prepared for your transition from the military, and share with our audience what went well, what did not go well, and if you looking back on it, if you could do anything differently, share what those things might be, so our audience can leverage from your lessons learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me also preface this with saying that over the last 8 years, I have talked to people every week about their transition. So this space that you're talking about, transition, is something I'm very familiar with, and I know some of the pitfalls, and certainly nothing hits closer to home than your own transition. So I'll start with that, and I'll say, really, as you transition, whether you've done 4 years or whether you've done 34 years, there's really two lines of effort, as we like to say in the military. There's two lines of effort that you need to be conscious of. One, of course, is prepping for that next life that you're looking forward to, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the other one that sometimes is neglected, and that is tying up this career, this military service, and you can't just do one and forget about the other. And I would say about a year out. And a year out, it feels like it's a million years away, but a year out, you really need to start doing some things that for a lot of us aren't natural. And that is, first of all, go get your complete physical, because that takes a lot longer than you think. And I know a lot of guys, and I'll put myself in this category. Something's hurting or something's wrong, you just kind of ignore it. You just put it off. You rub some dirt on it, that kind of thing. You got to go. You have to get it checked out, because if you don't, if you do it too close to your transition date, it becomes a problem. Or if you don't do it all after you get out, then it becomes a real challenge. So take care of that, and also be a little selfish, and that's also counterintuitive. Most of our DNA is, hey, whatever job I'm doing, I'm pretty important. There are people counting on me. This is a team. I'm going to let my team down. But you really, in the last 6 months, last year, you really need to take time for yourself and be a little selfish, and be okay with that. Just give yourself a little bit of a break, and spend some time looking to that next stage. So, and as far as that next stage, I was really thoughtful. I read a lot of books. I talked to a lot of people. I really, I was thinking, well, I'm only going to do this once, and I got to get this thing right. And so I really horsed up on a lot of knowledge on that. And first of all, let me tell you, for those that are close to that, relax about it. You don't have to be as uptight as I was, because yes, you may only do it once, but you don't have to get it right. And that's one of the things I've learned, not only for myself, but also for the many people I've talked to since, is your transition. It's not like you have to stick the landing, so just relax about it. It's okay. Typically, when people transition, they land on and I like to say that they go to a lily pad. It's like a frog, you go on a lily pad, and it's just a temporary stage. You think that it's where you're going to be, but it's not, because things just look so different from that vantage point that you just can't imagine. And so you typically 6 months, 12 months later, you're going to jump to another lily pad, and that's okay. And it may be in a completely different direction, and that's okay. You just don't see it. So yeah, you have to do some certain things, but don't sweat the load. Don't put a lot of stress on yourself that you have to stick the landing. And a couple things that I would certainly recommend is the first of all, be a strategic thinker, and let me talk about that for a second, because I taught a master's class at the college in decision making. We would talk a lot about strategic thinking and how so few people do it, because it really takes a lot of work. And what I'd recommend is, what I would say, put some white space on your calendar where you're doing nothing but thinking about your transition. And it's amazing how, because so many of us are so worried about whack-a-mole. I got 10 things to do today. I'm going to whack them out, and then I'm going to move on to the next day. But if you spend some time just really thinking strategically on what's important to you, what your values are, what you want to do for the rest of your life, and it's amazing how you can get a lot more clarity. And you do that not just on your own, but talking with other people, networking, finding some mentors, and so I would say those three things are probably the most important: doing some strategic thinking, networking, and finding a mentor or mentors to help you out.
Ted, I'll say real quick too, I think that's good to do at any point of your career. I mean, specifically transition for sure, but at any point in
Right.
your career. And, Howie's a mentor of mine. We've had conversations of this, and he told me one time, look, man, you can't be a slave to your calendar. You've got to open up some time for you and, just to think, like just scheduled time where there's nothing scheduled. And, it was in a lot of ways was a lifesaver. But in terms of transitioning, yeah, I think, with the military I talk to, it's kind of a race to that finish line. And they look at it as a sprint, and really it's a marathon with breaks. You gotta take your time. And like you said, find what's important to you, find what you want to do. Every guest we've had has said, a year or more is really the necessary amount of time to do this comfortably, even though it's going to be uncomfortable. And then I think another key thing that almost every guest has said is that mentorship is network, find people, speak to people, because there is a massive network. Look, for those of you listening to the show, and Howie's going to laugh here, we've had no problem finding guests for the show, right? We've just had people want to talk about it. They want to help. So that network is out there. And I think one of the many missions we have with Life After the Military is to introduce people to that network, even if it's just listening to this podcast. So those three things you said are right on. But I also wanted to add, at any point in your life, those are probably good things to be doing.
Absolutely. And Lee, you definitely touched on a couple things there that resonate. And finding mentors, and this goes a little bit against our DNA that we grow up with, I think in the military, is asking for help. It's people want to help you. And you don't, so many of us, and I'll throw myself in this boat. You're reluctant to ask for help because I don't know, somehow that it comes across like you need help. Yeah, for whatever reason. But people want to help you. People will bend over backward to help you. And also keep in mind, sometimes people help you because who knows, next year or 6 months from now or 3 years from now, they may ask for help from you. And you know what? You're going to love to help them. And so, we are kind of this military community, but even beyond that community, people in general want to help other people, I think. And so if you ask someone for some help, and often, and say, so some folks may say, well, how do you do that? And one of the things I learned from the Honor Foundation, I don't know if you're familiar with the Honor Foundation. It's a transition organization for Special Force, Navy SEALs and other Special Force and other services, but they call it having a cup of coffee. Call someone up. Let's just say your network is 5 people, you have a very limited network, 5 people, and just have a cup of coffee, say, with each one, hey, I want to sit down for 20 minutes and have a cup of coffee with you. And I just want to talk to you about what you're doing and what I may do. And in that, and you don't do more than, 20 minutes is very, it's not intimidating. It's not an hour, like I got to talk for an hour. It's not 15 minutes where it's really too short. And even 30 minutes, just do 20 minutes. I'm going to have a cup of coffee with you, and,
Right.
you find out what they're doing. You talk about, some things you're thinking about, and it's amazing where the conversation goes. And then before you finish the cup of coffee, you say, is there anyone else that you think I should be talking to, just based on what we've talked about here? And, and you try to get 3 names, and those 5 names turn into 15 more names. And then it just mushrooms there. So next thing you know, within a couple of weeks, you're talking to people that you never even knew, but they still want to help you.
Well, and I'll say this too, 2 points you just made that I want to reiterate about people wanting to help each other. I find that by and large to be true. I think when we look at it from a society point of view, we're kind of made to believe that that's not true. But, my experience over the last 2 years is my neighbors have wanted to help more than ever. We've taken care of each other the best we can. So people do, in their heart, I believe, 80% of Americans, probably more, really do want to just help and live a good life. The other thing you said, and I'll give you some of the tips I got when I was growing up. So again, I didn't serve, my wife did. So I have the kind of civilian upbringing, if you will. But when I was an undergrad at Montclair State, and I was in broadcasting, and they treated that program like it was a job. They did not coddle us in any way. If you were late for class, they kicked you out of the program, seriously. And I remember one of my mentors there, Patty, she said, "You have a hard time asking for help, don't you?" And I go, yeah, I don't want to, come across the wrong way. And I don't want to act like I don't know what I'm doing. And she said,
Right.
okay, listen, she said, I got this tool for you. She goes, this is how you gauge that. If you've done every single thing you can do before you come to me for an answer or for help, you should be coming to me every single time. But she said, don't ever come to me until you've done everything you can do. right? And that became the bar for me of like, okay, I've exhausted my resources. I don't have the answer, or I need help. And then I'd go to her. And I think with military, they're always worried that they're going to think I'm lazy, or they're going to think I didn't do my research. I have never met a military person that, well, I've met lazy ones before. I don't want to lie, but I have never met a military person that doesn't have that, I'm going to do the work, right? Kind of attitude, right? So for those of you listening, yeah, ask for help. And again, Ted, you just said this. Everyone seems to want to help, right? It's one of those things. It's just that first step of asking, and then the world will open up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you talk about things that you learn in the service, whether you've done 4 years or 24 years or 34 years. You mentioned the work ethic, you mentioned a little grit, and working for something bigger, and that's so important that you take away from that, but also the sense of service and helping others and doing that. And that becomes part of your makeup. And so, yeah, it should not be surprising if you call someone and say, hey, can we sit down for a cup of coffee? Like, absolutely. Let's find a time.
Ted, you've given some absolutely great perspective and insight that hopefully our audience, if they're listening, will leverage and take advantage of. Because I absolutely agree with you. I think that the network piece and the mentoring part of that of helping you to have an effective transition, I think that's the absolute key. I certainly benefited from that because I had people like you who were willing to share their insights, their ideas, their perspective with me that I think helped me have a reasonably effective transition. So great advice and great perspective. So what I'd like to do is kind of transition now to you're now out of the military. Is there something you want to say, Ted?
Yeah, I want to say one other comment I want to make on just when for folks thinking about transitioning, and that is, so I come from the logistics world in the Navy, and so we did the finances, we did the logistics, and so that was a very transferable skill. But I will tell you, so finding a job in logistics, finding a job in handling money, that kind of thing, from a finance, that was fairly easy. But I was not interested in going through the revolving door and working for the government and doing some kind of contractor. And some people are, that's fine. But I would just encourage folks to open the aperture a little bit. And that, again, that takes some time, some thoughtfulness, some thinking about what's important to you, and also talking with other people about what really drives them and what makes them happy, and because the skill sets that you have is so much broader than the technical skills that you have all these other soft skills that can apply to other places. And I would just, because I like to share that with folks when I talk to them, because sometimes it's not something that is intuitive or they think about it. And one of the examples I use, one of my favorite authors is James Michener. And I remember reading a book by him, and where, and I don't know if you all are James Michener, if you read anything by him, but he does a lot of historical novels, and he's written a lot of books, but he didn't become an author till he was 40 years old. And it was during World War II. He was in the Navy, and he was walking, I think he was on Guadalcanal, and he was walking on the runway, and it was almost like a near-death experience. And he kind of made up his mind, like, from this day forward, I'm going to do something. I'm going to think bigger. I'm going to think big. I'm going to act like I'm an important person, whether I am or not, because I feel like my life is just starting today, at 40 years of age. So he wrote his first book at 40. And so, when I transitioned out, I was 49, and others transition out later, or a lot of them younger. But my point is, at 49, at 50 years of age, or at 40 for James Michener, you can do just about anything. And so don't be afraid to open your aperture and think about something completely different. I mean, you're not going to probably play for the Chicago Bulls, but you can probably do just about anything else. And man, it's almost liberating when you look at it that way, particularly if you have a financial safety net, if you've got 20 years in. For those folks, I think it's a really sweet spot that you really have the latitude to do a lot of different things. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that, because I think it's a little bit of a mindset to open up the aperture.
Well, and that's kind of what you did, right? Because you end up going to work for Merrill Lynch with their wealth management division. So share with our audience what you did there and why you chose to work in the financial services field.
Yeah, so I've always been interested in building wealth, in risk management. I'm interested in retaining wealth that's built in just from a personal standpoint, and I've really I remember charting stocks when I was a youngster, believe it or not, on graph paper. And then I remember when I was on active duty, when the Beardstown ladies, and there was a big fad of having investment clubs, and I opened up an investment club. So I've always been interested in that. So that became very natural to me of getting into that. And also, you are helping other people. Which I think is a key element to success and frankly to happiness. If you're focused on helping other people, then it's just a huge reward system right back to you. So I was very interested in doing that. So I got into I was already familiar with American College. I actually they had just started this scholarship program when I was on active duty, and I connected with somebody. He encouraged me to apply. I applied for a scholarship. I was awarded the scholarship while I was working at Merrill Lynch, and while I was at Merrill Lynch, they called me and asked me to come up and take over the program, which was it had just been going on for a year. So I took over the scholarship, this veteran scholarship program at the college, right in its fledgling stage, and which I thought was very exciting for me to take something. If you could create a vision and have the autonomy, and by the way, it's a nonprofit. There's not like there's a big staff that you're walking into. It was me, and you could walk into that and kind of recruit other people that are passionate about it, in volunteers and that kind of thing, and create a board. And so that was very appealing to me. And so that's what I've done for the last 8 years is with the American College and building a veteran scholarship program. And by the way, Lee, we early on, I recognized that spouses should be included because it's a package deal. And the characteristics that spouses develop in the military experience are so similar, and getting a long-term career sometimes is difficult when you're moving around and supporting the spouse. So anyways, so we offered full scholarships for active duty veterans and spouses if they're interested in a second career in financial services. That's what we did. And over the last 8 years, we've awarded over 8,000 scholarships worth over $5 million. We raised about $10 million. So it's good for, we've got a corpus for years to go. So yeah, good stuff. Very exciting.
So Ted, and I'd love for you to describe the American College of Financial Services a little bit more, their specific mission. And additionally, you just described it a little bit, but I'm not sure that a lot of veterans or even folks on active duty may be familiar with it. So maybe you can kind of educate them on what the organization can offer them. And is everything focused on, like, the scholarships? Are they focused on financial services types of education and certifications themselves? Is that really where the focus is?
It is. It's a niche organization. It's a not-for-profit. We've got the highest accreditation from Middle States, and there is a couple master's degree, a master's science in management and a master's science in financial services. But the real wheelhouse are the designations that you get for individuals that are in a career of financial advising. So, a lot of people have heard of the Certified Financial Planner, the CFP. That's not owned by the American College, but the college is the largest educator to prepare people to take that exam. They own, like I'm as you mentioned at the top of the podcast, a chartered financial consultant at CHFC. That's one of their designations. They have designations for retirement income, designations for all kinds of special needs and wealth management. So there's about a dozen different designations that they specialize in, and it's all distance learning. So they've been doing distance learning since 1927. So they've been around a long time, and it's really professionalized the industry. Instead of like a New York Life having a designation, New York Life or Northwestern Mutual or Penn Mutual, they will send their advisors to the American College to get their designation. And the origins of the college was really with the life insurance, and the designation called the Chartered Life Underwriter, CLU, was the first designation. So there's a lot of folks that are in the life insurance business that have that CLU designation, and they consider the college their college because you're not required to have an undergraduate degree to get a designation from the American College. So a lot of folks that are very, very successful in this profession, they think of the American College as their alma mater.
Now, when folks do what you just described, like outside the military, are they paying to achieve those kinds of certifications and designations?
Yeah, just to kind of put in perspective, to get let's say the most popular designation is the Chartered Financial Consultant. That's the one I have. It's very similar to the CFP, and it's a 7-course curriculum, and each course takes about 2 months to get through. It's self-paced, but typically, so it takes about 18 months to 2 years to get through it, and that's designed so you're a full-time professional doing something else, and you're doing this on the side. You're getting your education on the side. So it takes about 24 months. And the cost of that designation is about $7,000.
But if you're active duty military or retired, there are scholarships you can apply for, and that would defer the cost or completely cover the cost of that effort.
That's right. If you're active duty, a veteran, or spouse, you can apply for a full scholarship. So it'd be zero out-of-pocket costs, and that includes taking the exams and that kind of thing, right? And the application, and that's the process that I set up over the last 8 years, and we'll award 250 plus scholarships this year. So it's
wow.
The welcome mat and the door is wide open, because, by the way, the industry, it's a really win-win, because the industry, financial services, really needs people that have kind of the gravitas and kind of the characteristics that we've been talking about, to move into this industry. So it's a win for the transitioning member, the spouse, the active duty that wants to set something up and get that education prior to the transition, and it's a win for the industry and the employers that hire them, and of course the clients that they serve.
So if someone wanted to pursue that, Ted, how would you advise them to go after and compete for a scholarship? What would you share with them? So,
I would recommend you go to, I like to say, nothing happens until you visit the website, and you go to the American College of Financial Services website. You get to the veterans page, and on every page once you get to the Veteran Center page, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a big red "Apply Here" button, and you click on that, and it takes about maybe 30 minutes to get through the application. And then after you finish the application, you need 3 references, and so that's usually the long pole in the tent. When the references, we'll get some questions. Once those questions are answered, an interview is set up, and you're off and running.
Great.
That sounds great.
Howie, excuse me while
You're fine. For those of you listening, he's just taking a sip of his drink here, which is something that happens.
This is for you, Howie.
Unfortunately, that's usually true.
So, Howie, I'll let you read what the mug said. I wouldn't dare say what the mug said. You can say that. My wife was
Navy beat Army.
There you go. So, Howie, before we jump into the final question, it's your favorite time of the show, isn't it?
It is.
Right? It is. So, Ted, every guest that comes on here, I create a book title. If you were to write a book, just based on the conversation, I create a book title. And yours landed early on. Your book title is "You Don't Have to Stick the Landing" by Ted Diggs. I think that's a good one. Said that there probably could be a good subtitle, like "You Don't Have to Stick the Landing: How I Transitioned Out of the Military and made a better life," or something like that. But I like that. You don't have to stick the landing. I think that's actually one of the more concise ways that someone has said that on this show, and I think it's absolutely true. In fact, Howie, I'm not even sure if we've had a guest kind of say that, right? You don't have to stick the landing. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I mean, you have to land somewhere, and you said it was a lily pad. That was the other title I was going to go with, lily pad to lily pad. But it's just a little too soft for this show.
Well, I look much more like a gymnast than a frog.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because it's actually a very healthy perspective because, one of the statistics that was thrown at me was, guys like us, Ted, who had, a certain amount of time and achieved a certain rank would change jobs normally, 3 times in an 18 to 24-month period. And it's kind of mentioned almost in a negative way. And I know many people who've experienced that, but you kind of took it in a very positive way that, hey, you may not like the first thing you do, and that's okay. You move on to something else, and until you find what fits you, from a values and a culture perspective. And I think that's a very healthy way to look at it because it's likely that a lot of folks will transition multiple times after they get out of the military. It's more common than it is not common. So.
Yeah, and the main thing is I've talked to so many people that really are hard on themselves, and you can just see the stress. And I remember thinking this myself. I'm only doing this one time. I have got to get this so right, and you don't. You just don't. And the other thing is just recognizing that you have way more skills than you recognize. All those soft skills that are developed are so important and so needed by so many not only employers but other clients and customers. If you want to go into business yourself, I mean, there's those characteristics and qualities and soft skills are so valuable that you often just look over like, oh yeah, well, everyone's got this. Well, everyone's got those that a lot of people that you've been dealing with for the last couple of years while you've been in the service, but not everyone has them.
Well, and it looks like you're going through that same process again now, right? Because I think you just closed out your time with the American College of Financial Services, and you're kind of a free agent looking for something else now.
Well, that's right, and it was it's also nice having the and I'll say the luxury of like, okay, now I'm looking for a new chapter. I feel like I've done everything I wanted to do. And you get to walk across this stage one time, right? And so what else is there? And I'll go back to there's an example that James Michener used in that same book, or maybe it was a different book, but he talks about an apple tree and how an apple tree can start withering after it gets to a certain age and it starts withering and it stops producing fruit. And one of the ways that you can get it to produce fruit again is you take an iron stake and you pound the iron stake into the trunk of the tree, and that shocks the tree and it'll start bearing fruit like crazy for the next several years. And sometimes, I use that analogy of like, okay, you're moving into another phase. And for me, this is my third phase, right? So I had my military phase, I had my phase with the American College, and now I'm going into a third phase, and I'm looking for that iron stake to kind of shake yourself and refresh yourself, get that strategic thinking. What else? What are the possibilities? And let's bear some fruit. Let's really get those apples coming. You may have to change your title.
Johnny Appleseed. Ted, you bring up a good point that just a reflection from my point of view too. And this is part of the mental fitness that we talk about at Pivotal Moments and on Charlie Mike. It's kind of a human condition situation, what you're talking about. I'm starting to realize that because the conversation you're having about, like you said, not joking, you don't have to stick the landing, and you can jump from one thing to another. You don't have to do it perfectly the first try. I have that conversation with college students all the time. And it just goes to show you that there is a stigma here about a fear of failing, and a misunderstanding of what patience is. For the longest time, I'm not the most patient person in the world. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that, but I also realized that when I got older, I'm not giving myself permission to even be patient most of the time. And sometimes things take time. A major life transition does not happen over a weekend. It happens over years, right? Going back to like what I said with undergraduate college students, I tell them, if you don't like your major, and again, the mirror here is if you don't like your job after the military, make the change. You don't want to be doing that job for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? You want to find something that you can enjoy where there's a high quality of life. If you've been in the military, look, you've been given orders for the last 20 years or however long you've been in the service. You're kind of voluntold where to go for the most part. You're in your position and you do it. it's not much different from high school. You know what I mean? So I'm just making parallels here because the civilian world goes through this earlier, in my opinion. But I think the military or the person transitioning from the military gets to go through it later. But you're actually much more mature. You have a lot more life experience. You also have a lot more financial security. But I find those two time periods to be similar. And I think that, that kind of leads into this last question about mental fitness, because we have this problem kind of talking about that in this country, or when we say things like mental strength, people associate that with weakness for some reason. So look, the pivotal moments, our parent organization, we seek to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. And as we said, everyone struggles with it at some point in different degrees, right? No one is not in that position at some point in their life. And if you're willing to share, have you had any struggles with your own mental fitness, or have you seen struggles with others in that realm? And tell us a little bit about, that situation. And then what do you do to manage those challenges? What do you do to strengthen your own mental fitness and, continually build as a human being?
No, it's a great topic because you are spot on. Everybody, to some degree or another, has to deal with this, and if they haven't, then they will. It's just
Right.
it's just a
That's
matter
life.
of time. And yeah, I mean, it's life comes at you, and I remember and life is not just a journey to the straight on up to the top. There are setbacks, and there are failures, and of course, it's a trite, but it's a truism. You certainly learn more from your failures than your successes. And if you look at someone that's only had success, be careful, because they're probably ready setting themselves up for a big fall. But so I think part of that, and first of all, let me also say that I think younger folks today have it so much tougher because of social media. I mean, because of social media, and I'm sure you guys talk about this a lot, but oh my goodness, it's tough. And the pressure to have your highlight reel going all the time, 24/7. And so, yeah, I think unplugging from that, or at least reducing that, is a big step. And I'm also talking personally, but also as a father of five. And while I can say that and encourage that, I am thrilled when one of them will call me and said, I'm unplugging for a while, or permanently, or for whatever, because I know that they're going to be happier. I know that they're going to be happier because of that. And I also think of like Charlie Munger, who's the business partner of Warren Buffett. If you're not familiar with Charlie Munger, you certainly are familiar with Warren Buffett. And he says one of the keys to life and happiness in life is managing your expectations and reducing your expectations, and which is sometimes again a little counterintuitive, because you always want to have these high expectations, but I've also heard the definition of quality is exceeding it. Whatever the expectation, whatever the line is, then exceeding it, and you can build a career on that, is managing expectations down and then constantly exceeding them. And if you can do that on a personal level, where okay, so you're not going to be a millionaire by the time you're 30. You kind of ratchet it back, and then you work you work hard. You do kind of the basic things, and it's amazing how you can succeed and exceed those things, but you're not always disappointed because you've set some amazingly high bar that is unrealistic.
Well, Ted, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I think the information about the American College of Financial Services is a wonderful opportunity for many of our active duty military and the veterans who have an interest in the financial management or advisory services field. The fact that they could possibly pursue whether it's degrees or certifications and do it at little or no cost, I think is awesome. I think you've given us some really great perspective and advice too on how to plan and prepare for and execute a transition. And listen, I wish you, as you go through your transition right now, because it sounds like you're not done. I wish you nothing but success in whatever you choose to do. You've had a very successful military career. Obviously, you're extremely successful at the American College, and I know you'll be successful in whatever you choose to do from this point forward. But thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Howie. Lee, great to get to know you as well. Thanks so much.
No, it goes both ways. Look, anybody who comes on here is willing to give us any amount of time to talk about this. It's a help. And look, my attitude with this show, like most things, is look, this show might help one person, it might help 100, but it's going to help someone. And that is the key. That is the point, that, we're here to help, and we're here to, share experiences and kind of make sure that people understand that there's solidarity with whatever you are or have or will go through. We're here for you. So with that said, you've been listening to Life After the Military. It's powered by the nonprofit Pivotal Moments, and you can learn more about the organization at pivotalmoments.org for more inspirational content, education, or to donate. For Howie Cohen and Ted Diggs, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us, and make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes soon, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.